There are two really big issues that law firms can learn from Spirit Airlines, and there's a pricing strategy and there's an ethics issue that they can learn. Now, I'm just leaving the gym, so I was listening up, catching up on my business news, and when I heard about this, I said, you know what, this ties into a conversation that I've been having with many law firms, and I'm going to break it down this way. First, let's start with the pricing conversation, and then we'll go into the ethics. Now, on the pricing conversation, to give you some background, Spirit Airlines appears to have been permanently grounded, meaning like Spirit Airlines is done. The company is shut down. If you go to their website, you'll see a message that pretty much tells them that they're in the process of winding down. So guests, do not come to the airport. There are no more flights for Spirit Airlines that are taking off. So a key thing that I learned in this, as I started to dig a little bit more, is one of the things that Spirit Airlines did is they went with a pricing strategy that targets a low price, high volume strategy. And what that simply means is they're going to be one of the lowest price airlines in the market. And the way that they were planning to make money is they were going to make it up in volume. So kind of like the strategy that Walmart came up with years and years ago when Walmart was rolling back prices. Their strategy was, we're going to be the lowest price, but we're going to make profit by having a ton of volume. Now, when it came down to Spirit Airlines, a couple of the challenges happened is that if you don't get the right volume, you're not going to be profitable. Or if you have a situation where the underlying cost to run your business starts growing faster than you can grow the volume, then you're going to have a big issue with profitability and with cash flow. And there can be a number of reasons why their volume was down. I've heard some people say like, hey, I just didn't like the customer experience. I personally have flown Spirit Airlines a couple of times. I will admit it's not my favorite. It wasn't my favorite airline to fly. I've done it a couple times from Las Vegas to back to Charlotte, North Carolina. It was definitely not my favorite. Whenever my wife was taking that trip with me, she would absolutely refuse to fly on Spirit Airlines. So I get that some of it may have been service. And then I do think some of it just may be that, hey, other airlines started to compete a little bit more. Other airlines lowered their prices enough for people to say, hey, it's worth paying a little extra to get a different level of service. Or maybe there was a better flight pattern, or maybe there were better options. Now, when it comes down to a law firm, the way this relates is the pricing strategy that you pick really, really matters. And here's the thing that I see a lot of times is, a lot of times I'll see law firms, when I look at if they're using hourly billing, is I'll look at their rates and I'll ask, how did you come up with these rates? And a lot of times they'll say things like, well, we looked at the market and we didn't want to be as expensive as some of the others, and we wanted to kind of be a price that people could really afford. So without saying it directly, you're kind of going for the lower cost and you're trying to make it up on volume. The challenge with that is that if you're trying to make it up on volume, you desperately have to get the volume, because if you don't get the right volume, then you're not going to be profitable as a law firm. Now, this becomes an even bigger conversation as more firms are looking at going to flat fee pricing. So if you're trying to use flat fee pricing, then it really, really matters how you set your pricing. And so you want to be able to dig in a little bit more and really understand, like, what is it really going to cost me to actually provide this service? Like, what does it cost you to operate your firm? What does it cost you to provide the services that you're offering? And then whatever price you pick, you want to make sure that there is profitability built into the pricing. And then another thing you want to look at is, you also want to evaluate whether or not you should increase your prices, over the years. I've talked to many different law firms who have had the same exact pricing for the last 5 years. Now, when you think about this, over the last 5 years, there have been so much that has happened. Like, inflation has happened. You've given raises to your staff. You've hired new people, and the new people you hired maybe at a higher starting salary than people you've hired in the past. Well, if all of your underlying costs are going up, but your pricing is staying the same, the only way for you to be profitable as a law firm is to try to make it up in volume, which for the most part, it's probably not going to work if you are still staying the same, because what's going to happen is your costs are going to grow much faster than you can grow the volume. And you're either going to run into a capacity issue, or you're going to run into an issue similar to Spirit Airlines, where what they started to do to make up the difference is they started taking out loans and said, hey, we'll use debt to finance the shortfall for a short period of time until we can become profitable again. Well, the downside is they weren't able to get back to a solid enough profitability to be able to cover all of the debt and the expenses that they had taken out. So their pricing strategy of being low cost, high volume actually worked against them. And so when you think about your law firm, you do want to ask yourself have you set your prices properly? Like, have you really done a true assessment of the market for the types of legal services you provide? And have you actually looked at internally, like, are those prices profitable for the type of firm that you run? Now, if you're not sure how to calculate that, definitely work with a fractional CFO. We do that a lot for a lot of law firms, but you can work with a fractional CFO and ask them to do a pricing profitability analysis on your firm. That way you can understand, like, hey, what does our volume need to look like for us to be profitable at these pricing levels? And then you can use your judgment to say, hey, is this going to work or not? Now, the other thing you want to do is you want to really pay attention to your cash flow. If you are using debt temporarily to cover some of the shortfalls or to finance some of your growth, you want to make sure that you have a true, honest strategy to make payments back on that debt. Because if you don't make payments back on that debt, eventually that debt can end up swallowing your business. Which then brings me to the last point, is there is an ethics issue that lawyers have to consider. Because when you think about a law firm and you think about all of the model rules, there are some rules there that talk about, hey, the owners or the partners of a firm are responsible for setting up a system for managing the business. They are responsible for they have a duty of care for legal services. So think about it this way. If you're a law firm and you're not really managing the cash flow and the profitability well to where you have to abruptly shut down your business, well, what does that mean for all of the clients that you've been supporting? Well, it's going to cause a serious issue for all of your clients if you're not able to continue operating your business because of financial concerns. And this is why I highly recommend that law firms work with a competent bookkeeper or a fractional CFO to really help them understand, have you really set up your pricing and your business strategy to be financially viable? Because if you run out of money as a firm, it not only is going to impact you financially, it could impact your license to practice law. It could have an ethics issue involved. So you want to make sure that you have a good strategy that allows you to, one, is understand the pricing approach that you're taking, understand your financial position, and you also want to make sure that you have a strategy to be able to provide the services at a profitable level so that you can continue to operate your firm in a successful, profitable, and ethical manner. So if you haven't heard the news, or if you are a fan of Spirit Airlines, unfortunately, I'll tell you, it doesn't look like Spirit Airlines is going to be back up and flying anytime soon or at all based on the news. But that is something that we should all take note of in the legal industry, of your pricing strategy and your overall business strategy. You want to make sure, does it make sense for what you're trying to do? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Law Firm and Finance Show, where we give you great content that helps you build a more successful law firm. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on all platforms and follow us for more content.